Rabbi Dov Cohen can tell us a bit more, and he joins me now. Good morning.
Good morning, Asma. Great to be on the show.
Thank you so much for joining me this morning. Can you just, before we talk about this in more detail, but can you just remind our listeners who maybe aren't aware of this religious period, what is Passover and why is it so significant?
Yeah, certainly. So Passover really goes back to the beginnings of the Jewish people. So we were a family that made our way to Egypt around 3,300 years ago with Jacob and his sons. And after 210 years of slavery at the hands of Pharaoh, we were taken out of Egypt. God took us out of Egypt, obviously with Moses and the 10 plagues, and we made our way to the sea, and the sea split. And at that point, we became a nation. So what's really relevant about Passover is that it's our national birthday, so to speak. We became a nation. We left the house of slavery. We became free, and we took that step forward towards going into the land of Israel.
And this is right at the heart of the Jewish faith, isn't it? This period of time.
Definitely, yeah. Again, because it goes back, we're talking about something that happened 3,300 years ago, right? So it's quite a long time. But the idea is that each year we come back to Passover, we add another link in that chain. So it's the parents telling their children, it's the previous generation handing over to the next generation, that collective memory. This is where we came from. This is why we were taken out of Egypt. We have a purpose, we have a mission, and now I'm handing over to you, next generation. And it's amazing to look back over 3,300 years to find ourselves here in 2023, where we'll be doing the Seder, we'll be doing a Passover experience and handing over to the next generation, to our children.
I never thought about it like that kind of handing over to generations and generations and being part of that chain of history, of religion. I never thought about that. It's really kind of fascinating. How is it traditionally celebrated? What would you be doing over this 8-day period?
Yeah, so I mean, I think that the main things to mention now, because we haven't got loads of time to go into every intricate detail, I'd love to talk about it, but the two main things to talk about are what's called the Seder and also the Matzah. So the Seder is, we'll be doing it on Wednesday night and Thursday night. It's 2 nights where we get together, and it's a bit like a 4D educational interactive experience whereby we tell over the story of the Exodus, but we have to make it come alive. You know, we have to, I mean, in my house, we act it out. We have different props, and we have Moses and we have Aaron, but we have Pharaoh, and, you know, we kind of act out the whole story of the Exodus, and we eat certain foods that, like I said, it's sort of a 4D experience, right? So we eat bitter herbs to represent the bitterness, and we drink 4 cups of wine to represent freedom, and we stretch out and lean to represent the idea of being free men and women. So this is like the idea of this really wonderful sort of very much an interactive experience that really should pique the interest of the children around us, because that, like I said, it's really important that we are educating the next generation down. You've got to aim it to the kids. But let's face it, Asma, we're all kids to a certain extent, right? And if you've got open eyes and open ears and want to learn, then you're a kid as far as I'm concerned. So
Absolutely.
We're all children in that respect. So we have to learn. And then the other side is the idea, like I said, about the matzah, which we eat on the Seder night on Passover. And matzah is the unleavened bread. When the Israelite nation left Egypt, there wasn't enough time for the dough to rise, and so they have this flat bread. There's no yeast whatsoever, and in fact, for the whole 8-day period, we don't have any leavened products at all. So there's no bread, no cakes, no pastas, no whiskey, no beer, and nothing with yeast whatsoever. We're not allowed to eat any of that for the whole 8-day period. So it's really just this matzah cracker that we're having for 8 days. Well, obviously you have other foods as well, not just the matzah. We don't just eat matzah for 8 days, but we have vegetables and all various types of meat and fish, etc. But the idea is that we don't have any bread. And I think what's fascinating here is that bread represents, puffed up ego and pride. If you take a bread, you've got flour and water, but you've got tons of carbon dioxide and yeast and air that puffs it up to be more than it is. And what's great about matzah is it's just this humble bread. What you see is what you get. There's no additive, there's nothing extra. It's just, like I say, flour and water. When you eat that matzah, you're almost like thinking about the idea of being humble, going back to myself, going back to basics. Who am I really?
I love that. And what an experience that would be to just have matzah for 8 days. And on being a kid, I definitely want to be with your family on Passover. It sounds like a great 4D experience.
100%. That would be great.
Just really quickly before I let you go, Rabbi Dov, what do you feel is important for you to reflect on during Passover?
Yeah, I think, like I said, it's 3,300 years ago. So how to make it relevant to 2023? And I think the way we do that is we can ask ourselves the questions both on a personal level and also on a global level as well. What is the Pharaoh who is the Pharaoh of my life? Where is the Egypt of my life? Where am I being held back? Where am I being controlled from external influences, from external behaviors, from people telling me the way to be? How can I break free and go back to being myself? And everyone has the answer. It's a very personal thing, right? For some people, it might be an addiction to social media. For some people, it might be a sense of lack of self-confidence. For everyone has their own thing holding them back. So, how can we break free? How can we make amends? How can we take a step forward this year on a personal level towards freedom? And also in a global sense, we've got to look around the world. We were let out of the house of slavery. Well, how can we go around the world and look at those people who are still suffering today through persecution, through modern slavery, through pain and suffering? How can we go out and lift them out of their suffering and their persecution?
Absolutely.
This is what we can ask ourselves.
Rabbi Dov, thank you so much for joining me this morning. Been a real pleasure speaking with you. That was Rabbi Dov Cowan, who was talking to us a bit more about Passover, which begins on Wednesday, 8-day festival, and just a bit of background there. If you missed the start of that interview, do make sure you listen back on BBC Sounds to learn a little bit more. There's so much coming up this week. It's a very exciting time of year. I have to say, I'm definitely like a kid at Christmas, but not quite the right analogy maybe, but it certainly feels that way with fasting, Passover, Easter weekend. I've been talking about this for